So here he is, happy to answer your questions. So until I see a question from one of our audience members, if you can tell, so you had incredible cast.
Yeah.
I mean, Ashanti
Yeah.
and Giancarlo. How did you go about casting them? And of course, I assume you had a casting director whose choices were those to go with those particular actors and musicians. And if you can talk a little bit about your directing process with those actors in this confined space.
Okay. As far as the actors themselves, I spent a great deal, and I, very good casting director, but we, as far as the central actors, that was kind of a hunt, sort of a director's hunt mixed with the producers. Okay. I'd been a huge fan of Giancarlo's from Breaking Bad. I sort of binge watched that with my wife sort of a little bit before we went into casting for Stuck. And I looked him up because I wonder if this guy can sing. I wonder if he's ever done any theater. He feels like he could do that to me. Just the way I watched him work, on camera on that show. And I looked him up, and sure enough, he'd done like 13 Broadway shows and sung a bunch, and loved singing and loved storytelling that way. Hadn't gotten the chance to do it in a really, really long time. We made the offer to him right away. There was my dog. We made the offer to him right away, and he wanted to have a conversation with me about it. And I of course was all ready to do that because I'm a huge fan of his. He told me that he loved the concept of it. He loved the character. He loved the idea of telling stories this way. Ashanti, same thing. I looked her up. I knew that she had done some stage musical work, and I knew that she understood sort of the genre of it. And I wanted to see if she wanted to do it, and she did. Arden Show, I found her again on a broad search that I had done, looking for a very specific, I wanted a Korean actress to play that part. And we found her. She had fight skills, she had dance skills, and it suited the character.
I'm going to interrupt you now because I have a specific question from Charlotte Adamis, and she's asking a question about the actors, and that is, did all the actors know how to sing prior to this film? So if we can continue on that.
Yeah, that's a good question. They all did, but to varying degrees. I mean, Gerard Canonico, who played Caleb, was currently singing like 8 times a week in a Broadway show. So he's really used to singing. He's probably more comfortable singing than acting in some ways, although he's a fantastic actor. So everybody had varying degrees of it. Amy Madigan actually had been in a punk rock band in the 80s. So she sort of came from singing and moved into acting from there is the story that she tells. But she is just a really kind of natural, whatever comes out of me singer. And so she doesn't have any fear. She just lets it fly. And I think you can see that in the movie. Omar Chaparro, I should say. He is a very, very famous actor in Mexico. He's the voice of like Kung Fu Panda, and he's been in many, many comedy films. And he's known as a comedian, but he loves to sing. And what he always says to me now when I see him is, I can sing much better now. He says, I've had lots more training now. I'm way more, because he was probably the shyest about singing. He was probably the most intimidated by the singing, but I thought he did a great job. So
they all did a great job.
Yeah.
Are you in touch with everybody now, by the way?
I am frequently, like, as the film rolled out and as different things were happening, and when there was delays for the film coming out, things like that, I was always in contact with everyone. I have a really nice relationship with everyone in the film. I'm a director who falls in love with my actors. I really do. I'm not just saying that. I know that sounds kind of Hollywood, but I'm from New York. I'm not really Hollywood. So I loved my actors. They have all completely different personalities. I think the question goes to, how do you work with the different actors? I believe in working with the actor in front of me. Whatever they need to do is the technique that I try to address with them. Some actors like to be spoken to a lot. Some like very little. Sometimes you can walk up and just nod your head at them and give them a look, and they go, okay. I mean, Ed Harris is like that, an actor that I worked with in another film. is I could, by the time the film ended, I could sort of walk up and just go, and he goes, got it. So it just depends on the actor,
Right.
how much discussion they want to do, how much they want to delve into the characters. I had a shorthand with Gerard Canonico. He's from the stage. We speak the same language. I figured out how to work with Ashanti and Art and Amy Madigan, who I'd done another film with, who she's so fearless. She'll basically just rip her heart out and throw it out in front of her and stomp on it if you ask her to. So, I mean, I've been really blessed with really strong, really fearless actors. And, I love them. I love working with them.
I have another question for you. This is from Sage Higgins, and she's asking, were there any challenges in shooting the film mostly in one location?
Yeah. Yeah, there were a lot of challenges. It, because you are limited to one location, which I thought would be so great for the shooting, which in some ways it was, but it was a very tight location. We built the subway set in a warehouse, so everybody was completely enclosed the whole time. Like I'm in this box here. Imagine just being in this spot. So it's not the big old open wide outdoor. So it affected the cast and the crew in the right way, but it's tough because there's no sunshine, there's no light, the air is kind of condensed, and it gave exactly the right feel, but it was very challenging. Plus it's very challenging to make the shots interesting. And if I would fault myself on anything, I'd say that I needed to find even more ways to make those shots more interesting, so that things kept moving. Because having just one singular location is pretty tough on an audience, for them to keep their attention as well. We took them off the subway train into people's memories and things like that as much as we could, but the limitations were our strength, but it was also, I believe, worked against us as well. So there were many challenges to that. Yeah, but I will say this, is that because we started the whole shoot on the subway set itself, which was the exact same scale as a real subway, when we moved on to a real subway, the crew were experts at how to put the cameras in the specific places, because we could pull the pipes on our subway set, but we couldn't pull any pipes on the real subway. But they knew how to get around everything, and the cast knew where they sat. We knew the right angles to shoot on to get the shots that we needed. So we were sort of like subway professionals. We knew how to get into that little phone booth area and really get the best, the best out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you said in the beginning that you went to LA in order to raise some money for the film.
More so to come out to the film. I had an angel person who helped me, Kevin Hurst, who worked at a finish house, and he began to help finance the post-production work on Stuck. And if it hadn't been for him, we would not have finished the film. He got me my sound guy. He just, sometimes somebody comes in and really saves the day. And this was one of those times. And I've been sort of swinging both fists and feet, at this thing for quite some time, because it looked like we weren't going to get to finish it. It was a fun thing to shoot, but then getting it finished and out the door was really tough.
Right. Well, I have a question here from an anonymous who says that it's not really a question, but this film has even more resonance right now, doesn't it? And obviously the person is referring to the isolation that we all have to self-quarantine, shelter in place, all of that. So is it something that you're thinking about now? And how do you juxtapose your state of mind then to your state of mind now?
It's interesting. Believe it or not, we shot this thing back in 2014. It took that long to get it out. It was just 2 years ago that we finally got it out. Actually, 2019 was when it finally opened in theaters. But we had no idea of the political climate that we would be in now. And the thing that's always fascinated me, and the reason that I love the premise of Stuck so much, and the brilliance of Riley Thomas that I thought was so interesting, is that I think it's fascinating to put people of different cultures, different backgrounds, different ideas, different ideologies, and put them in a room and just make them figure it out.
Right.
You know, I love and I celebrate the differences that we all have, but I just think that the things that we share that are similar, there's so many more of those things. You know, I know that we have different cultures and different beliefs, but we have so much more in common. I know that sounds corny. We have so much more in common with each other than anybody ever remembers, myself included. And so that's what fascinated me about it. And that's why I think that it still resonates now, because now more than ever, when we're so divided in so many ways, I feel like we have to get into a room and figure it out. I mean, don't you think in some ways if we just crammed all the crazy politicians into one room and said, hey guys, work it out. You don't get to leave till you do. We're not even going to send in any food. I guess that sounds a little cruel, but my point is that if everybody could just really listen to the other person and have an understanding of where they're coming from, and sometimes the only way to get anybody to do that is by forcing them together. You know, that's why these kinds of movies and these kinds of stories always fascinate me. When two people that would normally never, ever communicate together are forced to communicate for whatever reason, whatever circumstances force them to just be in each other's faces and have to face each other. I feel like they always come away having learned something that's positive.
I have two questions here that are really about the same thing. So I'm going to see if I could combine them.
Okay.
So one of them, and then maybe I'll just read them, but allow me to read them both one after the other.
Okay.
They're both talking about Alicia. So
okay.
One of them is from Sarah Higgins, who says that she loved the film and that Giancarlo was fantastic. However, why was the scene with Alicia so violent in contrast to the rest of the film? I thought once the door was closed, that was enough to understand the scene. And hold on, let me sort of like follow it up with a question from Amy Hebert, who says, the scene with Alicia where she was attacked, shocked, but was that her fear, paranoia, or was it a memory?
No, that's a fair question. Okay, so the first question sort of relates to why was it necessary to show that, I think, if I understood it correctly. And the other, and the second part is how are we seeing that? What it is that this is kind of my concept for the whole sort of story. And Riley and I have sort of discussed this at length, and we have sort of the same but different views on the whole thing. I feel like the reason that I always cut away to Lloyd right before they would tell their stories, because I feel like Lloyd hears their music. So if you notice, at the beginning of all the songs, or at some point in the song, I always cut to Lloyd's face and his eyes and what he's experiencing, because I feel like that is the pathway into seeing their memory, seeing their story, and hearing their music. To put it simply, Lloyd hears their music. As far as what's going on, she's going through her story, and it's as if she's shrieking, telling the Caleb character, this is why I don't like that you followed me. This is why this is not cool. And this is what happened to me. And it also explains, because when we first did the story, Alicia didn't have that storyline. Uh-huh. She didn't. She was just kind of, I don't know what adjective to use that's acceptable these days, but she was just kind of snooty and kind of well-to-do and kind of well-dressed. And that was all that she really had. And I said, what if we make her a really physical dancer? And what if we make it that the reason that she gets so upset about this is because something happened to her? And that makes Caleb realize that's why it's not cool to even do what he did, even though he was just so taken with her beauty. You know, this was before the hashtag Me Too came along too, that we made this movie. You have to remember, this is 2014. So it's before that had even hit. So it's almost more relevant now. And people have huge discussions about that based on that particular subject matter of this film, because he followed her. That's inappropriate. Right. And that to me is what the character has to learn, which is why that song Draw You came about, because where's his redemption for what he did? He has to apologize. He has to admit that it was wrong. He has to say all those things. And then is there redemption? And that's why at the very end, I mean, spoiler alert, is at the very end when she says, it wasn't cool. And she's not just like, oh, I love you now, but maybe we can be friends because I can see that you didn't mean to do this. I can see that you aren't a threat to me, but that wasn't cool. But he was so inspired by her, and he drew that beautiful picture of her. It was before the Me Too came. It was. And isn't it even more relevant now though? And again, that's so much of that I attest to Riley Thomas knowing how odd that relationship was.
Yeah.
And me as the filmmaker and as the storyteller trying to find my way into how these two could even have a friendship after what he did.
Right.
And that was my path. And I sort of, honestly, I believe that it's a storyteller and an artist's job is to ask questions. And if it pisses some people off, I get it. And if some people go, I can see why she was maybe not okay with it, but she forgave him. And I had to give him a pretty good apology. And that's where that song Draw You stemmed from.
Ah, wow. Okay. So I have a question that is kind of touches somewhat how you ended what you were just talking about, and that's coming to us through Facebook Live, and it's from John Russell Kring, and she's asking you, were you ever discouraged to not attempt a musical? Do you feel the musical is an underused genre?
Yeah. Here's the thing. Yes, in short. But here's the thing is that I spent about half my life performing in stage musicals on Broadway and regionals and national tours. So I'm very familiar with the genre. What I found was challenging is that not too many people on my crew had ever done a musical. Everyone was just sort of supposing how to do it. I had my ideas about how it should go. They had their ideas about how we should record it. Should we pre-record it? Should we sing it live? I mean, I'm like, let's sing it live. But then different actors were more comfortable with it than other actors were. Some actors were comfortable with it. Some weren't. You know, I mean, Ashanti comes from mostly, you know, pop music, you know, recording and things like rhythm and blues, etc. And so everyone had a different comfort level with that. It was daunting, and it was interesting to learn how to do it. They all wore these earwig things in their ears so they could hear the music, so I could record it as they sang it, but also they could sing along to their track. And we did variations on a theme with both of them. It was very difficult. We didn't have the money that any of the other musicals that you've seen this year or last year or years before ever had. We were literally doing an indie musical,
right?
And all that entails. So we had a lot of challenges that we ran into along the way. We ran into challenges during post along the way. I think everybody that worked with me and for me and our heroes that helped us get through this, as well as the actors, my crew, and everyone, and my sound, my audio guys, and the writers and of the music. And oh my goodness, yeah, it was a lot steeper, more difficult task than I think anyone ever imagined. I sort of imagined it was going to be this hard, and it was. So yeah, it was tough, but you know what? Nobody wasn't up to the task. We got through it. And, you know, someone once said that whenever a movie is made, it's kind of its own small miracle. And I would agree. And I know, and the person that said that to me was the first guy I ever made a film with was Rob Weber, who got me into filmmaking. He and I made our first short film together. And he just looked at me one day and said, you know, whenever anybody finishes a movie of any kind, it's a miracle. And now I know what he meant.
I mean, we're kind of running out of time, so I have one more question, and I have a statement from another audience member. But the question is again from Sage Higgins, and she's saying, as a huge fan of the musical Next to Normal, how did how did your acting experience in theater translate into directing? Interesting question.
That's a good question. You know, I've always been in musicals like Les Miserables, Next to Normal, mostly the ones where it's not really, you know, dancey or too. Although I got my equity card doing West Side Story, but again, sort of a more serious musical. Next to Normal was one of the most rewarding, most challenging theatrical experiences of my life. And the songwriters and the director of that, Michael McGrath and Tom Kitt and Brian Yorkie, respectively, they were always about us telling the story through the song, and they were never as concerned about the sound or the perfection of the voice. They wanted us to really put all the emotion into it. And so that's where I start. To me, singing in a musical is an extension of the dialogue. So I was careful to try and always make sure, and I was hard on the writers, that this can't just be a cool song that you want to put in the show. If it doesn't perpetuate the same way dialogue does, I'll cut it or I won't want to use it. Just like the dialogue has to make the story go forward, I felt the songs did too. So I always felt that what the songs conveyed was more important than the technical singing, the sound of people's voices. I wanted their emotion. I wanted the song to tell the story of the character the most. And that's how I would say my experience in a show like Next to Normal dictated how I go through a musical film that I'm directing or that I'm writing on, or that I'm helping to tell the story from the director's chair.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have just one more thing here, and it's a statement from Kate Stone. And she says here, I don't have a question. However, I just watched the film this afternoon and loved it. Getting to hear the inside story from you is wonderful. Thank you for sharing your time with us. And I think it's a perfect way to end this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks for watching.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have a question from Avery
Sure.
on Facebook Live. And he's asking, and we'll do it fast because I do want to get off now. How did Ashanti get involved with the project?
I looked up Ashanti, saw that she had done The Wiz and a number of other things. I knew that her voice was killer. I spoke to Tim Young, one of our head music guys, about her, our production music supervisor, Tim Young. I spoke with him about her, and we contacted her agent and her manager and just pitched the project to her and sent her the script, and she became interested, and then we met with her and got on well. I think I sent her my previous film, and that's kind of how she got hooked onto it. She's great, man. She's such a pro, so easy to work with, and I had a great experience with her. And she's the real deal. I mean, she can sing live. She, records like no one's business. You play the song for her once, and she can do it and add her thing to it. She's amazing. She helped write the bridge for the song that she does on the show, and she's a dream. She's a dream to work with.
Wow.
Someone ever asked me like, I know you worked with Ashanti in a movie. Should we hire? I'm like, hire her. Yeah, she's the bomb. She really is.
Well, Michael, I can't thank you enough. You were our guinea pig. It's the first time that we're doing it.
Good. How'd we do? We did okay, right?
I think we did fantastic, and we got
nobody cried. Yeah.
Nobody cried. Nobody got hurt. And I think some people really enjoyed themselves and were inspired. And thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and effort. And stay in touch. And when you make a new film, are you working on something or not quite yet?
I'm always working on something. I'm working on a couple things. Yeah. But thank you so much to the Woodstock Film Festival. That was an amazing experience for us. It was so important to me to have the film screened in a cool place in New York, and Woodstock was our spot. And I loved having it there. I loved having it there. And you all were incredibly generous. And if any filmmaker ever asked me about Woodstock, I said, go. If you can get to that festival.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. Well, enjoy your time in LA. Stay healthy. Stay well.
Stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. Yeah.
All right. Take care, Michael.
Take care.